Welcome back to the Law Unscripted, where we talk about all the things about the law and the legal system that you never knew,
never understood,
and no one ever told you. I'm Virginia Tehrani.
And I'm Chelsey Rogers.
And we're with Tehrani Law LLC because you never need a lawyer
till you do.
All right, everybody. Our topic for today is
COVID.
Yeah, COVID. So last week we talked about the experience that Chelsey had as a law student during COVID.
Absolutely.
As she was the law student class of COVID, truly of COVID. So check out that one for last week as to what her experiences were. We're telling a lot of stories about how COVID affected her, how it affected law school. And today we're going to go through how it affected me as an attorney during COVID, because it was quite a wild experience.
I can't imagine. Like I thought law school changed enough, but I mean, the legal world was you're still dealing with ramifications in the court from COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things with COVID that I'm just going to throw out here now is the delays.
Yeah. That
courts were shut down for months.
Right.
And they didn't do anything. Like the court clerks weren't processing things. You could file and your case would be put on the floor in somebody's office. Different states, different jurisdictions had different things. So I work in Virginia, DC, and Maryland. Yeah. And in Maryland, like it just stopped. And it is April 2023.
Yeah.
And there are 2 jurisdictions in Maryland that are still catching up. And it's like 6 to 12 months behind still.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So that's been, I think, the biggest thing that affected me as an attorney in our area, especially for that, is the courts just weren't prepared to be shut down and then to try to catch up with everything in the meantime.
And when you think about sort of throwback to everything that happened during COVID, you think about the attorney who was the cat face on.
Oh my God, I loved him. I send so much love to that guy. He was my little hero. The older man who, if you haven't seen it, was getting on Zoom and he had the cat filter on and didn't know how to take it off. And he's there saying to the judge, "I am not a cat." Oh my gosh, I died because it was truly, it embodied everything that was happening in the attorney world for COVID. And my heart went out to him. Truly, though, my hero for all of COVID. He will be the example of an attorney for me.
I am not a cat.
I am not a cat.
Poor guy.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about some of that experience for me personally. What we do here is we have a law student who's Chelsey and an attorney talking about the law. And these series are about our personal experiences because that is part of the law and the legal system that people don't know. And we want to share with you, especially for law students this time. It's not exclusive to law students. So if you're not a law student, please don't just stop listening. I think it's interesting for anybody looking into the law.
Yes.
But
I have dog hair on my face. I'm so sorry.
We have dogs. We have Charlie over with Chelsey, our golden Cocker Spaniel. And we have Willow stuffed in the blanket next to me, who's our merle colored Cocker Spaniel.
Sorry, I was just like hitting my face for like 2 minutes. I was like, maybe I should offer an explanation.
They don't shed a lot, but it is getting warmer. So they are shedding a little bit, but we have to have them in our shows.
Yes, absolutely.
They're almost constantly here. So that's if you see us on the video podcast on YouTube, that's the doggies you're seeing and the reason we have pink blankets.
Yes, I love it.
But anyway, so we're going to go through one of the things that we're doing with the Law Unscripted now is we are taking the ideas of the podcast and we are putting them into a bar preparation program. Yay. We're not a replacement for law students who are doing Barbary, Kaplan, Themis, Studicata, Quimby. We're not a replacement for those programs. Please use those programs. We have chosen Quimby. Yes. Chelsey is going to be taking the Quimby bar preparation through the summer, and we've become an affiliate with them. So we're going to drop a link in the notes in the description to our podcast below. Check out the link if you are interested in using Quimby for bar preparation. follow that link and you will get a discount. So go through them, get a discount. Like I said, we'll be using Quimby. So when we do, we're going to swap over in the summer. So instead of this podcast, this season will be over on May 9th. Yeah. This finish of season 1 at 21, episode 21. And then we're going to go into bar preparation. So check out the lawunscripted.com. It's going to be up by May 2023. And then you'll be able to follow Chelsey through the bar. There are going to be a lot of free resources, but there will also be some that you can pick and choose for help with certain subjects, just a certain area, or the entirety of the bar. So that's where we are. And then we're going to go back to me for story time.
Yes. Let's jump in.
So yeah, I think the delays were the biggest kink in the system is we couldn't get anything done. Yeah. Even criminal cases were delayed.
Oh, there's so many issues with that.
And it was so hard for the courts to figure out how are we going to deal with bond hearings.
Yeah.
And then there's speedy trial.
Yes.
Right? Is defendants in criminal cases have a right to speedy trial.
Yeah.
But if the courts aren't even open.
Right.
How is speedy trial affected?
Yeah.
Does everyone just get those months are just chopped off and they don't count towards speedy trial?
Right.
The judges aren't even allowing people into their courtrooms.
Yeah.
So how is that affected? And that was a huge issue.
Right.
Was the criminal cases in the courts of all of the different states and jurisdictions figuring out how long they would be closed.
Right.
If they went back in person, when would that be?
Yeah.
What were the restrictions on it? They had to start figuring out emergency family law cases.
Yes.
So emergency custody orders, foster care, all of that with the criminal cases. The timing issue was insane.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening is by having to press those matters forward, they then put all of the civil cases,
just on
the normal civil cases, on the back burner.
Oh.
And I do personal injury law. So almost all of my cases, it was like you just cut out a year. It was like you chopped it off. And all of my clients are calling and they're like, when is my case going to go to court? I'm like, what court?
Yeah. Right.
I'd love for it to go, but there is no court. This is not my fault. There is no court. Assume we have another year. And it just kept backing up and backing up and backing up. And a lot of my cases, it's like 3 years later.
Right.
Where we filed. Charlie's all stuck in the oh, sweet boy. He is stuck in the cord for the earphones. Oh, baby. There you go. So he's going to run away. Sorry, Chelsey.
No, we're totally good. Let me just...
Left side is,
Look at that. Okay, I think we're in business.
Technology, right? It's fun. Technology and dogs, but we wouldn't give it up.
Absolutely not.
Makes it more interesting.
So, okay, regular court was closed.
It was.
And it was just kind of all of a sudden. And so, of course, these issues that are not more important, but sort of more pressing are taking, first in line.
They have to.
And then you sort of have this weird time frame where things are happening, but it's like via Zoom.
Yeah, so like you went to law school during Zoom, all of a sudden attorney world is Zoom. Nobody prepares you for this. No. Like, how are you supposed to go to court by Zoom? It had not been done. There were like some civil cases that would go by Zoom, but it was scheduling.
Right.
Like, so some courts in DC and a couple like Baltimore in this area had gone to, before that, scheduling by Zoom, or you could call in and pre-schedule things. But it was really more like calendaring.
Right.
And now we're having hearings, motions, and trials by Zoom.
I've seen you do depositions through Zoom.
I've done depositions by Zoom. I never did depositions by Zoom. It was like, you have to be in person.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, you're trying to see your witness in person or the other person's witness in person.
Yeah.
In a trial, you like for your witness to be able to look at the judge. You want the judge to see your witness in person. You want them to feel more kindly toward them.
Yeah.
Or, each side has a reason for their witness to be in person. And there's just that disconnect when you're sitting behind a screen hoping that your witness says the right things and trying to get somebody to feel favor one way or the other, it just put a barrier. So all of the trial advocacy things that I've learned and been working on for 17 years.
Out the window.
Right. It was like you just had to restart and figure out how to do trial by Zoom.
Yeah.
And that's what I've called these last 3 years is trial by Zoom.
It's true.
And it's like, it's kind of trial by fire, but now it's trial by Zoom. And it's literally and figuratively trial by Zoom.
Yeah. And then not only I think technology is an interesting part of it, but then clients with technology in particular.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So the clients, you couldn't have them in your office at the first time, right? Our office was closed too.
Like you said, how do you as an attorney like confer with your client appropriately?
Yeah, it's the first time, I guess it was 14, 15 years that I'd been practicing when it first started, and now it's 17. But it was like all that time I'd been prepping clients in person. I'd been seeing them in person. I'd been going to trial with them in person. And now all of a sudden I have to get on the phone on Zoom and be like, okay, here's how it's going to go. Yeah. And some of my clients had never met me.
Right.
Never met me at all. I've had clients who never actually met me. I had others who didn't meet me for years and then now have been seeing me in trial. But trying to prepare them, trying to make sure do you have Zoom access on your phone? Can you get it? Do you have a computer? You can't come into my office. Do you have a friend with a computer? We would have a lot of trials continued because our clients didn't have access to the technology or they did and then it crapped out and then you couldn't hear them. So there were a lot of trials that were continued even on Zoom because technology didn't work.
I'm thinking of one particular story of someone who showed up to his Zoom in an interesting position. I don't know if you want to tell that story.
Oh, which one was that? You're going to have to start it.
He was not exactly awake the entire time.
Oh, yeah. No, there was that one client. So, yeah, that's true. One of our clients.
I think this is one of the funniest things I have ever seen. Just personally.
I had forgotten about that.
Oh, I hadn't because it's in my brain. So this is like a real hearing. Like there's a judge.
It was a trial. Yeah. Like on Zoom, there was a judge.
There's the other attorneys.
Other attorney was there. I was there.
He's like,
attorney. Oh my gosh. He went to sleep in bed.
He was in bed when it started and he was kind of like propped up, like hitting one of those like GQ poses.
And just then went down and down.
And then you could hear the snoring.
Yeah, because he hadn't muted himself.
You could hear it was just a little bit of the noise.
I forgot about that.
I had not.
Yeah, that doesn't help with how you want your witness portrayed and your victim portrayed to the judge.
Yeah.
When they're falling asleep in court. But it's not court to them, it's their room.
Right.
It's their bedroom, right?
Or they're wearing pajamas or
they were riding in their car. I had one victim who was driving in their car while on Zoom. And it really, you can't, and I can't say anything.
Right.
So, in court, I've had a couple people fall asleep in court before, but I was able to, nudge them. They didn't fall over. There's no bed. I could actually do something. But I can't say anything across a Zoom monitor through video of, hey, Mr. So-and-so, you need to wake up. And if I do say it, it's in front of everybody.
It's bringing attention to it. Exactly.
Everybody. So I couldn't communicate with my client to wake up.
Yeah.
Just to wake up. I'm not trying to tell him what to say or do.
But it's come on. It's like the elbow
But it can't even get him up. So that was really difficult. And has been. I had one trial by telephone.
What do you mean?
I had an entire trial by phone.
Phone?
Yep, phone. Not even Zoom, phone. Nobody saw each other.
How would you even know who's speaking?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And that was the issue on Zoom too, is everybody's trying to talk over each other at certain times. There really had to be rules that were set down as to this person speaks at this time.
Right.
But for the phone, it was a little more difficult. You have a sequence at trial of the witness and the attorney. So there was some sequencing on it. but it was definitely harder even than on Zoom. The court clerk had to give a few instructions. The judge would have to talk more than usual to say this person needs to talk now. But we opted into it. So we didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
But again, there were so many delays.
It's like, do this or you're waiting indefinitely.
Exactly. And I had to talk through the client. It was the client's decision in the end. But it's like, okay, I'm calling the client on the phone and saying, we have these options. Your case has been going on this long.
Yeah.
We can continue it again and hope for a Zoom trial in the near-ish future.
Yeah.
We can continue again, demand a trial in person, or we can do it by phone.
Wow.
And that client chose to do it by phone.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the trial by phone ended up in our favor.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
In a significant way.
Oh.
And I will never forget. Here's the best of it. The other attorney, and we don't curse on the program, so I'm going to use a different word, but you can understand what was actually said. So
oh my God.
Things that normally you wouldn't hear if you were in court in person, right? So we're all on the phone. And the judge gives the ruling, which again was very high in our favor. Yeah. And it was like, okay, I give, I award such and such amount to the plaintiff. And the defense attorney, you hear on the record, okay, because it's by phone on the record, she says, well, I'll shoot. But she curses, right? She uses the other word.
That's so funny.
It's an immediate, this is the award, and then, well, I'll shoot. And
That's
like
so funny.
Silence.
Oh, no.
Because everyone heard it.
Yeah.
Everyone. And so we got off, and my client immediately calls me. She's like, did you hear what she said? Yes, I heard what she said.
I love the debrief after. You have to be like, I'm actually, now that you say that, I'm pretty sure, don't take my word for this, but I'm pretty sure that Supreme Court arguments, like in 2020 and 2021, were done via phone, not Zoom.
Wow.
I vaguely remember someone came and spoke to our Civ Pro class, actually, and he frequently argued in front of the Supreme Court, and he was going to do it again. But it was by a phone call instead of Zoom. I hate Zoom particularly, but I think I would also hate a phone call more.
It was hard. I love phone calls for scheduling.
Yeah, I mean,
even
for
in the
something
court,
like that.
I am so happy to do a phone call for scheduling. I would prefer if I always do phone calls for scheduling now.
Yeah.
I actually prefer some of the things that have come out of COVID.
Really?
I prefer depositions by Zoom now.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
I absolutely prefer them. They're so much more easy and convenient for me and the witnesses.
Yeah.
That the witness can be anywhere and we can be anywhere. I don't have to drive to Virginia as much.
Right.
To do my Virginia cases. I don't have to drive into DC, which I appreciate. And I still feel like there's enough of the right kind of communication through Zoom for a deposition.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I do have a question for you. Mm-hmm. Were you ever concerned on these platforms like Zoom or Skype? Kind of dropped the bag on this one.
It did.
Like Skype,
it started at there and then it swapped almost immediately to Zoom.
That's a thought. But my question is, was confidentiality ever a concern of yours? So I know that it was something that was a big concern sort of with like juvenile cases and family court cases. We talked a lot about it my first year of law school. It was also an issue with, I told you we did everything by Zoom. We had Zoom bombers who would come in and scream terrible, awful things. And so I wonder with sort of court proceedings that may or may not end up being public record, depending on what type they were, if that was a concern.
For me, it wasn't because I wasn't in criminal law or family law. Family law, like you said, had a really hard time with it because of so many juvenile proceedings. Because if you do any kind of child custody, guardianship cases, even like the regular child custody just between parents, all of that is still confidential and private. So there had to be extra security measures. And that was part of why it took so long to get court up and running by Zoom.
Right.
They could have started sooner, but they had to make sure that there were more security measures put in place in their platforms and make sure to to do that first.
That makes sense.
I didn't have to deal with it so much because all of my cases were adult.
Yeah.
And it was going to be public record anyway.
Afterwards.
So whether they had access to my trials or not, my trials were technically public. And if my clients didn't want information disclosed in public, then they shouldn't go to trial. But I do know, like you're saying, in the other areas of law, that it was a huge concern. And that a lot of those cases, if they weren't immediate and emergency situations, they would try to push until they could get back in person. And then when we started back in person, we had masks, which made a whole different issue. It was
issues.
Right. Would you rather do Zoom where you can at least see each other and see the facial expressions? Or would you rather go back in person where you're in person, but you can't see each other?
Right.
I preferred Zoom.
Yeah, I think that was something for us too, that if it's choosing between masking and social distancing or Zoom, I can't control COVID, but I was like, I'd much rather be on Zoom if this is what being in person is like.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting. I know we were like supposed to observe court and stuff, and we could just log in. I think there are benefits to that though. I think having like access, like you said, for depositions, it's easier for witnesses to participate. It brings costs down just sort of all around.
Yeah.
I think there were some good things that came out of that, of like accessibility, but
There were. I do agree that there were a lot of good things that came out of it with the technology, with accessibility. I do still have more scheduling. I love anything I can schedule without driving down to DC.
Right.
I appreciate. I like those changes. I like the Zoom changes with depositions. It did bring down costs.
Yeah.
It brought down so many things. The trial, I still prefer in person. It's just easier to be in court in person and without masks.
Yeah, it did make it difficult. I don't know how you do trials when you have juries, because we would have to do our fake trials, and you're pretending to publish to a jury via like sharing your screen, which opens up a whole world of just accidents to happen.
It did. Yeah, we had to share screens for evidence as well. And it was, again, trying to figure out the technology, and the first time you're using it or the other counsel is using it, it's all time consuming, and oops, that document's not what I meant to show you, or here's the one I have, but let me scroll through all of the pages to find the right page that I want to show you. Can you see this? I mean, all of these things, I know you're like, oh yeah, check, I had that problem, but, even in your own work, but it was a real problem.
I just think with the legal system that is, like you said, there's trial skills that are so particularized, and then it all was like gone. It was all gone.
It really was. It was trying to learn trial advocacy all over in another way. Yeah. And now I don't need the skill anymore. Yeah. It's like I learned it for a few years and now I don't need it. But for depositions, I still do. For some things, I still do. But it really was a wild change.
Yeah.
The masking in the courtroom was really difficult. They even in our courtrooms, a lot of them had the plastic dividers at the counsel table. So even though you were sitting next to your client, you were both masked and you had to talk through a divider. So you might as well be on Zoom, not talking to your client at all. And now your judge can't see that.
You're like scream whispering to your client.
It was, so I'll tell you my most embarrassing experience.
Oh gosh.
Which was kind of like, I am not a cat, at least the closest to me. And then we'll stop. But, the first time I went back to court, it was the Maryland Workers' Comp Commission. Okay. Workers' Compensation Commission. I was doing workers' comp, and they were the first courts in Maryland that opened back up.
Interesting.
They're administrative courts. They're different than the regular ones, and they're the first that opened back up. And I loved it in the sense that they had a schedule.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't a cattle call. They didn't do that. I wish they had kept it. So they would schedule you. You're at 1:15. The next case is at 1:30. You came in for 1:15 and then you left.
Yeah.
So it was very much that. But it was my first time. I was like, okay, I'm going back in court in person.
Yeah.
Got to make sure I have everything. I sort of did.
Oh, gosh.
So I went in my car to grab my mask, and the only mask in my car was my son's. And it was a blue mask with dogs all over it. Cartoon dogs.
That's kind of cute, though.
It was adorable. It's an adorable mask, and I would wear it if I needed to. Like, my son and I would kind of swap it. But it was the only one in there. And I'm like, oh, my God, I am going to go into court with
a little puppy dog.
With a puppy dog mask on. And I had to.
Yeah.
There was nothing else to do. They didn't have masks at the time to hand out, right? Yeah. It was the very first start of trying to go back in person. Now you can get a mask almost anywhere in the court or in a doctor's office. But then they didn't have extra masks to give you. So I walked into court in a suit with this blue puppy dog mask.
You just need one that says, like, not guilty or, like, not liable.
I really did.
I have to think that someone has done this, right? There has to be some attorney that has done this.
I mean, it's me. It may have just been me, but maybe there's another attorney out there that happened to. And I got in front of the judge, and I was so mortified, but I couldn't take it off. There were requirements. You had to wear it to be in the courtroom, and I didn't want to continue the case because I had a dog mask. So I stood up and I was like, Your Honor, the first thing I would like to say is I would like to apologize for my dog mask. I'm really sorry. I thought I had my own, and I think my son took it and left me his. And this is the only mask that I have. And that's how I started.
Oh, my God.
And I finished as quickly as I possibly could. And I honestly went back and I cried.
You cried? No.
I was like, this is such a fail. My first time back in court. I'm not used to this. I'm in a mask. I don't like this. There's no other person in the room that I wore a dog mask.
I think that's kind of fun, though, the fun masks. But I feel like there were plenty of times that I just cried because of COVID, like, honestly. Because I was struggling already with the heat and humidity in DC. They don't have I never wear my glasses, but I'd have to wear them to go to school. And so then you have the mask and the glasses, and I would just be like hot and sweaty, and I was like, I can't function.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot. I think that's kind of fun, though. You're like, Your Honor, I'm sorry, I have a dog mask on. It will not impede my performance.
I won't ever do it again.
And you have to talk so much louder with the mask on.
You do. You have to talk louder. Then you feel like you're screaming, but you're not.
Yeah.
Then your judge keeps telling your witness to talk louder that they can't hear the witness.
Yeah.
I do not recommend it to anyone.
No.
I really don't. I wore my mask a lot in court because, I mean, you couldn't come in if you had COVID.
Yeah.
There were so many restrictions. I mean, there were everywhere, but it really, for attorneys and for people going to court, it was a really different experience that I would not like to repeat. Keep some of the good things that came out of it. Yeah. I like a few of them that came out of it. But for the most part, it can go jump.
Yeah. Honestly, agreed.
So that's where we are.
I love it. This is not I'm sorry about my dog mask. I am not a kid.
There, you just did what you could.
Yeah.
It was,
that's
you
so
got
funny.
through.
Oh my God.
Thankfully, my cases are catching up. They are not all still caught up. I'm still working on cases from like 2018.
Yeah.
But alas, we're getting there. And so it was exciting. It was interesting.
Yeah.
I did learn a lot of new skills that some are still useful and others will never be useful again.
And we're thankful that you'll never have to use them again.
I am. I'm very thankful. And I'm glad, even though you had to deal with it in law school, at least by the time that you're an official attorney, you will not have to deal with a lot of this.
If we go back to that, I'm on my island. I am gone out of here.
Yes. So that's where we're going to leave it today. Come back with us the next couple of weeks before we end our season. We're going to be talking more about law school. So for those of you who are interested and fascinated by what really happens in law school, we're going to go back to that to finish out the season. But like us, follow us, subscribe. When you hit the like button, it helps because it actually gets our videos out to other people who otherwise won't necessarily see us. So it increases viewership so that they too can hear the exciting and random and interesting stories about the law. I'm Virginia Tehrani.
And I'm Chelsey Rogers.
We're part of Tehrani Law LLC because you never need a lawyer
till you do.